I was standing in a neighbor's driveway a few months back. Typical Saturday afternoon scene. We were staring at a mess of wires on a dual-axle trailer that looked, well, it looked a lot like the mess sitting here on my bench right now. My buddy, decent guy, real hard worker, was standing there with a pair of dull pliers, just hacking away at things. He was twisting wires together, wrapping them in that cheap, half-melted electrical tape you get at the grocery store, and just sort of hoping for the best. I pulled out my phone. I'd actually bookmarked the wiring diagram for that specific trailer because I didn't feel like blowing a fuse for the third time that week. I told him, hey, just so you know, the white wire is the ground on this specific model. If we hit the green one, we're going to be heading back to the auto parts store in 20 minutes. He didn't even look up at me. He just gave this little dismissive grunt and said, look at Professor MIT over here. Why do you have to make everything a science project? Just let me work. Everyone laughed. And look, it was a good line. I laughed too. But as I watched him blow a 30-amp fuse 5 minutes later, and then realized he didn't even have a spare, which basically ended the move for the day, it hit me. That professor thing, it's not really about the trailer. It's just this weird way we've started acting like being clueless is some kind of badge of honor. We've reached this point where being smart is almost a social liability. Somehow we decided that common sense just means guessing, and that actually reading the manual is a sign you're out of touch or, I don't know, acting superior. By the time we're done today, I want to show you why that keep it simple attitude is usually a trap. We're going to talk about reclaiming your edge, without being the guy no one wants to grab a beer with, and why your ability to actually think deep is about the only tool you have left that isn't going to be replaced by an app or an algorithm. I should probably admit something before I get too far into this. I haven't always been the check the diagram guy. About 6 years ago, I was changing the brake pads on my wife's SUV. I'd done it a dozen times on my old truck back in the day. I figured, how different could it be? It's 2 bolts and a clip. I don't need the book. Well, it turns out that specific model had an electronic parking brake. It required a very specific sequence to retract the caliper. I didn't check. I just grabbed a C-clamp and started cranking. The sound of $1,200 in German engineering snapping in half, it's a very specific sound. You don't forget it. I spent the next 4 hours on a Saturday afternoon waiting for a tow truck, feeling like a complete moron while my wife watched from the kitchen window. I was trying to be the simple, capable guy, and all I managed to be was the expensive, unprepared guy. That's the bill you pay when you make a hobby out of guessing. It isn't just an eye roll at a cookout. It's actual, literal debt. It's lost time. It's that feeling in your gut when you realize you're in over your head because you were too proud to do the smart thing first. Think about the world right now. Everything is a hack. 10 minutes to a better marriage. 3 steps to wealth. We've started treating our own brains like they're old hardware we don't want to strain. We say, I'm just a simple guy. And we use that as a shield so we don't have to do the heavy lifting of actually learning something new. It's not humility, it's just being dishonest with yourself. And eventually, you start to believe your own act. You stop reaching for the hard books. You stop asking the tough questions because you don't want to deal with the eye rolls. You settle for average because average is safe. But average doesn't fix the trailer. And average definitely doesn't lead a family through a real crisis. I want to tell you about a guy I knew years ago named Frank. Frank was a master electrician. He was the kind of guy who could look at a control panel that looked like a spaghetti factory of wires, and he could just sort of hear where the fault was. Frank didn't have a degree, but Frank was a student. He had these grease-stained notebooks, kind of like this one, where he'd sketch out circuits he'd seen. He'd read technical journals about engine compression just for fun on a Tuesday night. I remember a kid on the crew calling him a know-it-all because Frank insisted on using a specific torque wrench on some lugs. The kid said, just tighten them till they don't move, Frank. It's not NASA. Frank didn't get mad. He didn't lecture the kid. He just said, look, if they're too loose, they arc. If they're too tight, you stretch the threads and they'll snap in December when it's 10 below and I'm at home. I'd rather spend 2 minutes now than 10 hours on a Sunday when the plant's down. The kid laughed and did it his way when Frank wasn't looking. Sure enough, 6 months later, those lugs vibrated loose, caused a fire in the switchgear, and killed the whole production line. Frank was the one they called at 3 a.m. He didn't gloat, he didn't even mention the kid, he just did the work. But here's what I learned from Frank. Knowing what you're doing, that's how you keep trouble from spilling into your house when things get heavy. It's about being the person people can actually lean on when the stakes are high. It's not a trophy you keep on a shelf, it's just reliability. It's about being the man people can actually trust when the power goes out. Now, I'm not saying you should be that guy. You know the one. The guy who corrects your grammar while you're telling a story about your grandfather. If you're using your brain just to make the person next to you feel small, well, you're not smart. You're just unpleasant to be around. That's usually just a guy who's worried he's not enough, so he has to act like he knows everything. Real maturity is knowing how to carry your brains like a pocket knife. You keep it sharp, you know how to use it, but you don't go around waving it in people's faces. You only pull it out when there's a knot that needs cutting. If your smartness makes people want to leave the room, you're doing it wrong. Real wisdom is taking something complex and making it simple for the guy standing next to you. It's about making the problem feel smaller, not making yourself feel bigger. Let's talk about the real reason we need to stop this celebrated stupidity. Here's what you actually lose. Control. Pure and simple. When you stop valuing deep knowledge, you hand the keys to your life over to people who do value it. If you don't understand how your money works, someone who does is going to take a piece of it every single month. If you don't understand how your body works, you're at the mercy of whatever some guy on a podcast tells you to eat this week. If you don't understand your own industry, you're just a line item on a spreadsheet waiting to be deleted by a kid with an algorithm. By pretending that smart is the enemy, we're choosing to be victims. We're choosing to be led instead of leading. Think about your kids, or the younger guys at the shop. What are we showing them? That the goal is to just fit in and guess? Or that there's a quiet, rugged dignity in actually knowing your stuff? I want to give you an experiment for this week. It's not a challenge, and I'm not going to sell you anything. Just try this. Pick one thing this week, just one, that you've been winging it on. Maybe it's a tool in the garage you've never actually read the manual for. Maybe it's a specific part of your job that you usually hand off to someone else because it's too technical. Or maybe it's your blood work results, actually looking at the numbers and Googling what they mean instead of just waiting for the doctor to say, "You're fine." If you're just starting out, keep it small. Learn the why behind something boring. Why does your lawn need that specific fertilizer in April? Why does your car take that specific oil weight? Don't just do it because the bottle says so. Spend 10 minutes understanding the physics of it. And here's the kicker. When you learn it, don't tell anyone. Don't go out and try to prove how smart you are at the next barbecue. Just do the task with that new knowledge sitting in your head. Watch how much more confident you feel when you aren't guessing. Watch how the noise of the world starts to quiet down when you actually understand the signals. There's a profound peace that comes from being competent. It's the peace of knowing that if something breaks, whether it's a trailer, a business deal, or a relationship, you've got the tools to at least start the repair. We've been told that smart guys are weak, but in my experience, the strongest man in any room is the one who has the most options. And knowledge, that's what gives you those options. It's okay to be the person who knows the answer. It's okay to be the one who reads the fine print. In a world that's getting louder and shallower every day, your depth is about the only thing that's going to keep you upright. I remember an old carpenter I worked with when I was 20. He told me once, "A dull tool requires more muscle, but a sharp tool requires more focus. Only one of them gets the job done right." We've been trying to muscle our way through life by ignoring the sharp parts of our brains. I think it's time we stopped doing that. I think it's time to sharpen the tool again. And if this conversation sat well with you, maybe consider subscribing. We're just trying to be the kind of men who know which wire to pull when the lights go out. Thanks for giving me your time. I'll see you in the next one.